If you are searching for advice as to how to manage your money better, then you've come to the right place, because this show helps you earn better, invest smarter, and also spend so that you can get the best bang for your buck. Now, not all of the conversations that we have on this program are comfortable. In fact, some topics are hard to talk about, but we must talk about them all the same because they are important. And the first topic that we've lined up for you has to do with how you can claim the mutual fund units of a deceased investor. And this is important both from the perspective of the claimant as well as from the perspective of the investor, because ultimately the objective of the investor is to ensure that their financial dependents are taken care of. In the second conversation today, we speak about a new fund offer which is currently open, the ICICI Prudential MF's Housing Opportunities Fund. We talk about what it's meant to achieve, what its objectives are, and everything that you need to bear in mind before you decide to invest in it. And finally, in our Tech Tuesday segment, we speak about smartphones that have been launched in 2022 that are worth less than 30,000. And this is for those of you that are not very comfortable spending too much money. Of course, 30,000 is not less of an amount, but those who don't want to spend upwards of 40 and 50,000 rupees on a smartphone, we've got you covered. But let's start with the first conversation of the day. And it has to do, like I said, with the nomination process or the claiming of mutual fund units of a deceased individual. Let me introduce my guest for the day. We've got Santosh Navlani, who's the Chief Operating Officer of ET Money. Thank you so much, Santosh, as always, for taking the time. I want to start with a broad question. And I think we've spoken about this over a period of time. It's very important to have nominations in place, to have a will in place. Is it really very, very complicated when these things are not done? And then we'll get into the various things that the claimant needs to pay attention to.
Yeah, so Alex, there is no way we can say it is unimportant or it requires any stress on the fact that it is the most important aspect of your investments in life. Most of us, or almost everybody, invests money for a better future, not just for our own selves as investors, but also for our family's future. And many times we also plan enough social security in our own way for the family while we are alive as investors for our family. And one of the biggest thing that you give back to your family while going and in the inevitable event of a death is the wealth you create for yourself to be passed on to family. And if you don't provide any kind of way how to claim that, then all the hard work that you did your entire life for earning money and also growing that money goes for a waste. So it is the most important aspect, in my opinion, to really ensure that your investments are having clarity on nomination, legal heirs, or succession of those investments is most important aspect before you even start making investments. I cannot really stress more importantly. I can probably bring in a news piece which came about 6 or 8 months ago. I remember reading it. Some 82,000 crore worth of money is lying into bank accounts, mutual funds, life insurance policies, PF accounts, completely unclaimed. And the way that this unclaimed number comes in is because nobody has been active on those investments or coming to claim that money. That means it is lying unused, and maybe more quantum is possible, which is lying unclaimed. And it's a disservice to somebody who invested or saved their hard-earned money that his or her family cannot take benefit of it. So I would say that it is the most important aspect. I cannot stress anything beyond this.
But even, Santosh, if there is a nomination, if the investor has been diligent, and if, for example, they have a joint account holder, so in my case, my wife is the joint account holder, or if you have your nominations in place, it is the onus of the claimant to make the claim, right? So what do you need to know at the start, at the onset? Are there different types of claimants?
Yeah, so the first thing that you kind of, as an investor need to do is pass on adequate information or almost all information about investments to your family members so that they actually know what to claim if and when an event happens of a death in the family. So the first thing is knowing that where the money has been invested or lying or saved for the future of the family. That's number one. And second aspect is the moment you know that, you would know that if which investments has a nomination already done, which investments actually have no nomination, where the joint account lies. So there are different kind of processes involved depending on who is claiming money. So almost every mutual fund company in the country allows investors to invest in as different individuals together. Like there is a solo account, so I can be a sole investor in a folio. There can be possibility of joint ownership of the units that we have. So there is a second first holder, second holder, and up to three holders are possible in a mutual fund folio. So if you are a joint holder in a folio and the primary holder or one of the holders is no more, it's a different process altogether. And if you are somebody who is a claimant as a legal here in the absence of no nomination in the folio, that's a different process. So depending on who is claiming money, there is different process. Are you claiming money as a nominee of a single or a joint holder folio? Are you claiming money as a nominee of a single holder folio? And if you're claiming money as a joint holder who is a surviving member of the folio holders, the process will be different in that case.
Okay, so let's talk about each one of these processes as you've enumerated them. Let's start with the joint account holders, and you said very clearly that there are up to three that are allowed. Now, one would assume, or rather, I think this is a common doubt that people would have, that if you are a joint account holder and if you have access to the account, then does it automatically mean that those units are yours, or is there a process of transferring units from an account holder to another if you are joint account holders?
So basically, the claiming procedure of money, Alex, involves something called as transmission of units in the name. So when you are approaching the mutual fund company to claim the money as a respective claimant, then you have to initiate the process of transmission of units as a thing. So if you are somebody who's a joint holder in a folio, then you may have access completely to the money. You may be able to transact further even if the primary or secondary holder is absent. But it's always better to update the records of the mutual company, because if one of the joint holders is no more there, tomorrow the other holder may also be there. So it's always better to kind of reorganize or organize the investments better for the sake of future itself. So if you're a joint holder, then there are possibilities whether you are a surviving member of a joint account or you are a surviving member of an animal survivor account. So in mutual funds, when you are investing as a joint holder, there are two kind of accounts. You are an animal survivor. That means both or anyone of the members in the folio can actually transact. But if the folio is joint, where both the investors are required to sign each document, then the fact is after one of the investor is deceased, you cannot operate the account. That means you will have to initiate the transmission process with due course. Now, the process there is you have to apply for transmission of units by requesting through a letter or the transmission form. You have to provide the death certificate, which is notarized by the kind of competing authority, to be able to prove that there is a valid valid death has happened of the deceased investor. And third thing being that the updated information about the KYC documents to prove that you are the the surviving member there. So if you provide all these documents, then the transmission process initiates into your name. Typically, it takes 30 days for a mutual fund company to process all these things into your name. So I think the simplest case is if you are a joint holder in the folio, it makes life far faster compared to other cases. If you are somebody who's a nominee in the joint or a single folio holding, you again have to submit the same kind of documents, just that there can be complication that a will has been returned. So in the absence of a will, the nomination always kind of is very simple to execute. But if there is conflict in a valid will which has been written by the investor before the death, and what is mentioned nomination, it can create some kind of complication. So one has to ensure that the records of a mutual fund company as nominees and the records of the investors will actually mention same names and same proportion. Otherwise, it can create some kind of conflict in the family members itself.
Let's talk about those two aspects though. On the one hand, you have nominees, and on the other hand, you have legal heirs. Let's first talk about nominees, because there are various layers to this as well, right? And another fact that just occurred to me, Santosh, is that it would be in the best interest of even joint account holders to update the system, because when it comes to booking the profits, there has to be the element of capital gains or capital losses, and that would complicate matters because a deceased individual's taxes would then raise questions, right? So let's talk about nominees and what a person needs to bear in mind if they are in fact a nominee.
So, Alex, fortunately, when it comes to transmission of units, there is no element of capital gains there. So, what happens is if the assets or the investments are getting transferred into the name of the nominee, then there is no capital gains or any kind of taxation involved into the process, because it's the rightful ownership getting transferred as inheritance to the nominee in that sense. So there's no capital gains involved at the time of transfer. Of course, when the nominee decides to sell the investments, then the same laws of taxation gets applied, because the date of transmission has no impact on the purchase cost. But what happens is the transmission date will have a mention of what date the actual units which are getting transferred into the name of nominee were purchased. So the taxation will be as per the original date of purchase and not actually when it got transferred in the name of nominee. So taxation actually is quite clear on that side. It's not something which is going to create hazards in the life of the nominee. Uh, uh, the aspect where the joint owners has to take care of updating the records is at the time of modification of records, the joint holder needs to prove that the deceased investor is no more there through the notarized death certificate and the other document which are required to submit. The at that point of time, the nomination can be changed into a different person altogether, because the plan of the investments or the end beneficial investment may change at the time of this updation. So that's the thing that the joint holder has to keep in mind, or the nomination who is getting modified has to keep in mind.
Absolutely. I want to also talk about what happens in the event where you don't have a joint holder and you don't have a nominee, and you have legal heirs, because the Indian system is very clear in that your legal heirs get an equal share of whatever is left behind if there is no clear will. So let's talk about when you have a will and when you don't have a will, and how a legal heir can claim units from a mutual fund scheme.
Sure. So let's tackle both the cases separately. When you have a will and we don't have a will, Alex. So when one has written a will before, before the uneventful death of the investor, the will or a registered will has a higher priority in dictating who gets the rightful ownership of the units of the mutual funds. So if there are kind of conflict in what was mentioned in the folio nomination and what is mentioned in the will or the registered will of the deceased investor, the name mentioned in the will take a precedence, and the ownership will be decided according to that. If the will is not there, then nomination gets priority, and nomination in mutual funds is allowed up to 3 nominations, and you can specify the percentage of nominee 1, nominee 2, nominee 3, depending on. So, for example, if investor actually says that I want to give a ownership of 25% to my parents, each of them, and 50% to my spouse, or divide between spouse and children, then the rightful mention of the percentage allocation will get distributed between the nomination. Now, if it is will records are going to take a precedence over the what is mentioned in the nominee nomination form, then the legal heirs will have to prove by actually submitting a indemnity bond that they are the legal heirs, and the mutual fund company's responsibility will end after transfer of the ownership to the legal heirs, and from there on the legal heirs will bear the responsibility if somebody else approaches mutual company onto the for claiming of the units. They also have to submit a affidavit that they prove their identity to the mutual fund company, and of course there has to be the copies of the registered will or the succession certificate along with the death certificate of the deceased investor to be able to claim those amounts. So I think it's all very clear. Of course, it's not common knowledge to a lot of investors, but this is all specified by law and mutual fund companies. So it's a crystal clear process that people can actually follow. Just that the claimants, in that sense, a nominee needs to be aware that there is money to go and claim. Otherwise, what we read is 82,000 crores unclaimed money lying in the financial ecosystem of India actually keeps increasing otherwise.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. And in fact, therefore, it might make sense on a periodic basis. Every quarter, for example, if you are responsible for your investments, to tell your spouse or tell your financial dependents, keep a notepad or maybe just send a mail of the investments that you are making, and ensure that they're aware of what you're doing for them, because ultimately that is exactly what you are doing. You're safeguarding their financial future. Thank you so much, Santosh, for taking the time. It's been a very important conversation that we've had today, and pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Alex.